Well, dear viewers, you're very, very welcome. And we're delighted to have MEP Maria Walsh with us today. Maria, how are you?
Good. How are you two? Slightly jealous of your background, John, in comparison to mine. I've been at the computer since first thing this morning, and I feel like I'm letting the side down for Midlands Northwest, not having as a beautiful one as you. But delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. A momentous 24 hours, Maria. I mean, it would be amiss of me if I didn't, a remiss of me if I didn't mention Leo Varadkar's resignation. Did it come as a shock to you?
Absolutely. And I think I was talking to a colleague of mine earlier this morning, and the best way I can describe the past 24 hours, particularly watching the Taoiseach and party leader and a dear friend step down, you have a lump in your throat. And that's probably the best way to describe disappointment to see him step off the podium. Uh, Happy for him based off that being his own decision. But it's a whirlwind 24 hours, and it just goes to show you from a political standpoint, things move and change. And yeah, I'm sad to see him. I'm sad to see him go.
Yeah, what struck me with the resignation speech, he was emotional and the emotion came across. And it always struck me that if he had that emotional connection more often, people would warm to him more.
Yeah, I've heard rumblings of that too. I guess I had the privilege of seeing him out and around canvassing for the last 5 years between the European elections and various other things. So I've seen that connection that he had with people, and people, flock to him when we're out and about. And I remember the man who stood before us in Washington, D.C. this time a number of years ago at the start of what I don't think anybody could have called at the time the world pandemic that stopped us all living, and essentially living the way we had been doing. And I know he showed emotion there, and he was steadfast in his deliverance in that. But I hear that point. I mean, yesterday I don't think anybody. I think everybody saw, perhaps to your point, a little bit too late, that warmth that I've been privileged to see on many is the occasion. Mm.
Yeah, he spoke very well. He spoke well.
He did. And not easy. I mean, not easy for any person to leave, to step down from something that they've been, I mean, essentially as a politician, in that position, I can only imagine. But putting myself into the shoes for a hot second, that's not me putting my name forward as an MEP. One can't, just for clarity's sake. But you give everything to your life to that. Like, your entire identity is that position, and it has to be in order to do the best that one can do. So, I think regardless of whether you liked his politics or not, whether you met him or not, I think we had a serious leader for 20 years, over 20 years, who grew up in front of us in this position, and led us in brilliant ways.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for moving on to something new. I find this, we have quite a number of politicians who've been in the Dáil. Well, I can think of two in particular that have been in the Dáil 40 years or so. Surely it's not good for them. It's probably not good for their constituents. I mean, surely you get stale after that length of time.
No, I mean, listen, I think, I'm thinking of similar colleagues who've served at
Mm.
at various levels. I in the European Parliament, I work with people who got elected day one, like me in 2019, and those who've been serving for a number of years, if not decades. And to pick up on something that the Taoiseach said yesterday, you know, your heart and ambition and drive needs to be there. And if that's there for people, then that's fantastic. If they feel that they can continue to get up in the morning and serve for the best of their abilities on behalf of everybody that they represent, then that's fantastic. On the flip side, then you see a number of my colleagues not contesting the next general election or not contesting the next European elections, as well as local elections, because we have them upcoming, of course, on the same day on June 7th. And you know, if you take, and I'm going to just most recent in terms of Deputy Kieran Cannon, who's in Galway East constituency, where I'm connecting from today to speak with you. You know, he made a valid point, you know, serving for over 20 years himself. If this was in a different job, perhaps a private sector job, then 20 years is an incredible body of work to have achieved and to have delivered on. And now, given the society we live in now, you can trial and error and try different type of careers. And I think that's really exciting. That just goes to show you how competitive of a talent workforce that we have. And that should also be the same as politicians, that we're constantly revising, reviewing, bringing in new people from different fields who didn't grow up in party politics, as well as that seasoned candidate too. And it needs to go hand in hand. So, I mean, I think a personal decision is a personal decision and what they decide. So, but as you know, and all forms of engagement is the best for our democracy, and that's ultimately the best for Ireland overall.
Now, speaking of June the 7th, Laois and Offaly have now been moved into the Midlands.
Welcome to the constituency of Midlands NorthWest.
Exactly, but we get an extra MEP.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an even more exciting race than the last time out. You got in 2019. What are your predictions? If you're a betting person, what are your predictions?
If I'm a betting person, I mean, one would hope I would retain my seat, but you know, in 2019, as a parachute candidate, which at the time I was really questioning on, now I'm really embracing that term because I think it's a fantastic way to talk about getting into politics. You know, I think it's going to be incredibly hard. And I would have said that in 2019 too. It's 15 counties, which I cannot stress to people listening to this or watching this, that it is a wild constituency in the sense of you have the most rural areas to the most urban areas to Dublin Belt in terms of Louth, Meath, Kildare, to where you are in terms of Laois and Offaly now coming back into the constituency, and from where I am in the most west periphery of our European Union. So it's big and diverse. An extra seat certainly helps. I think I would have been challenging that in 2019. I don't think it should have gone to Dublin and Ireland South. It should have come to us, considering the repercussions our border counties or our constituency had around Brexit. And now at 14 MEPs, we have a strong voice going back into Europe as we have now. But yeah, a lot of names put forward. You know, I would, for 5 seats, I would imagine we'll set up anywhere between 20 and 25 names, if not more. And I can't say I'm confident about being a candidate co-ite yet, because on Sunday, this coming Sunday, March 24th, we have our own European convention in Fine Gael, and it's a contesting convention, so 3 names. So I have to keep myself humble and honored in the fact that I still need to move through our good governed party in order to seek that to seek the opportunity to stand before Midlands NorthWest. So I've 1 or 2 more hurdles to jump before I can say I'm feeling good about being put on the official ticket. So maybe ask me on Monday and I'll give you a different answer. But for now, I'm certainly looking forward to it. Yeah.
We'll follow up on Monday, Maria. So you have to present your body of work to your parliamentary colleagues before you get the green light to present it to. Let's say you get the green light and you are on the party ticket. And in my case here, we 4 votes in this household here. what's your what's your selling point?
Yeah.
Why should we vote for you?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what's a beautiful way about our Irish democracy, that we knock at your door or we connect to you, and you're asking us that question because just for those watching this, and listening to this, in other European countries, bar ourselves and Malta, they have list systems. So you and your 4 votes would go to the ballot boxes and vote for a party in Europe, not necessarily me going to your door and asking for you to trust me and connect to what I'm putting forward. So I just like to always offer that because we're a very unique system here in terms of proportional voting, and I hope we hold that dear because I don't think it works, or you don't have that authentic leadership. Anyways, parking that for a second because I'm running out of time and I have 15 seconds to connect to you on this door and your votes. You know, for me, I have had in the last 5 years, you know, I feel very strong that I have a proven track record. Elements of equality are incredibly important to me. I worked on equal pay for equal work effectively for any person, female in particular, and our allies that we so desperately need. We have a 14% pay gap. So women in many jobs work an additional 50 days per year in comparison to men. And that's simply not good enough. It's not only socially right, it's economically imperative that we fix that right. And then if you look at our history in the EU, the fact that we had the removal of the marriage bar because of our relationship and our joining in the EU just goes to show you 50 years on, we still have an incredible amount more work to do on equality. So that will never differ or change for me. Equality is incredibly important. If you look at the work that I've done in terms of making sure farm families, small farm families are feeling as protected as possible. Do we have a lot more work to do in this case? Yes. And the next design of the Common Agricultural Policy is where we do that, so that it's not just becoming me paying you, taxpayers paying you, the European Union deciding for you that you do X, Y, and Z to protect the environment, but we still have a food security issue, and we need to put food on your table and making sure that you're running that successful SME business that we've been really proud of. From a greening side, though, because we can't ignore that, I really do believe diversification is our best friend here in Ireland as an island nation. And when you look at the likes of, we have farm families working with technology, we have various areas, and I know Laois Offaly this is important in terms of the shifts and changes of Portlaoise. There is no reason why we cannot design for us to become not only just renewable friendly, but also leaders in that renewable green change, and Laois and Offaly being at the very center of that, given the amount of work in land space that you have, that we can certainly celebrate. With all of that, parking kind of those things, let me just say, tying in all of that for me is so important that mental health still continues to be very important, and that I deliver, as I promised in this mandate, an EU mental health strategy, because second leading cause of death right now in the EU for our young people is death by suicide. And I don't think anybody can say that mental health or death by suicide, the challenges that are impacting from COVID and for other stressors, have not impacted us. I don't think I can meet anybody who feels that their mental health is in tip-top shape, and so too is there everybody in their family and community. So for me, that just gives a quick flavor. And if I was on the door, you either have slammed the door in my face, or you're saying, come on in for a cup of tea, and I hope it's the latter.
Oh, it always, every candidate, every party, they're always invited in. But I know you touched on farmers' concerns. I mean, their big bugbear at the moment is what they see as over-regulation. Can you see an improvement in that sphere? Then Portlaoise and that going away from the old fossil fuel model, they'd be worried. Well, we had joiners and fitters, and now we're moving to an economy where nobody can actually nail down exactly what roles they're going to have. A lot of it is quite up in the air.
Yeah. I mean, to that point, the world of green and digitalization is similar to your point, what railway planters would have had a number of decades ago. And we've been incredibly strong as a country, adapting to and putting the shoulder to the wheel in the sense of making sure that we are maximizing our talent pool, and that can never be taken for granted. We're gritty people. We work incredibly hard. We're resilient. And I don't see that, and I don't say that in a patronizing way. I say that in a way of that is something that can never be taken for granted. When you look at our development of offshore and the potential of offshore, the fact that we have an incredible wealth and more science needed and more research needed, of course, in terms of our carbon capture. And the fact that that also has a future goal when you look at the way we're connecting here. I'm connecting to you because of digitalization, and the fact that we're able to do that in the speed of light is incredibly important so that we can develop rural communities, to create something, be a product or lived experience or indigenous business, like that type of service, and grow regardless. We don't need to be connected to the likes of Dublin, Cork or Limerick to scale ourselves, that we can be self-sufficient. So I know for that, I'm not giving anybody listening to this, here's the 5 top careers. I mean, I really think careers in apprenticeships and traineeships can never be undervalued. I think they're incredibly important. And when you look at retrofitting, the renewables, the space of hydrogen, perhaps if you look at the Galway port developments, if you look at biomethane and how we can capture more in terms of even recycling of spaces. I was up at a plant in not too far away from you in Tullamore, in terms of looking at waste as not just waste, but as a resource. So I say all of that with the sense of the next coming years will determine and set the course for where we are as most West Periphery. And I'm very excited about that because we have an abundance of workforce and resources to tap into. And the Laois area is no different. When you look at Portlaoise itself, Portarlington, and further afield, feeding into Offaly, like it's a wealth of space for us to really develop.
Yeah. Now, moving on to the media space here in Ireland, you were on the committee
Yeah.
that in the Parliament that drafted the European Media Freedom
Yeah.
Act, and it got passed. I think it got over 400 votes for, I think 90 or so against. What's the big advantage of the act for, let's say, a small media concern like myself going forward?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, independent and free media has never been more crucial to democracy, and I say that with such seriousness because we have sadly plenty of examples both in the United States, both online and very much offline. When you look at the Russia, when you look at China, when you look at eastern blocks of our country, and we can't be ignorant to what's going said and what's being said here online too in this country. So the protection of free media is essential. The protection of smaller entities within our free media space is essential, so that regardless of you and I listening in, connecting in, are getting factual information that's not pivoted, that's not satire, that's not disinformation, that we have that ready and able, and then able to make the best decision for ourselves. Funding is incredibly important to make that work, though. So the Media Freedom Act had lines to support that, and then emphasis on member states to continue to support that. And I know from a governmental standpoint that's incredibly important, regardless of the Taoiseach change, that simply won't change. Also in terms of our core principles as Fine Gaelers. We have to figure out a way to live safely online. And as a young European and a young MEP, and someone as a country that houses social media platforms for the rest of Europe, we have a responsibility to make sure platforms are doing their due diligence. And once it's online, even for 5 minutes, it's incredibly toxic. The amount of misinfo, and we're trying to combat that with having real conversations like this to someone who puts up 280 characters of a tweet or creates deep fakes predominantly about what we're seeing is a female politician in a fake intimate setting. But you and I both know that's not how people consume. People don't look at an image or I mean, look right now what's happening with the royals in the United Kingdom. Like, there is a worldwide debate right now about someone who's healing from surgery. So like, we are infatuated with realness, but yet we seek it in the most in unreal ways. And I talk long-winded here, and I don't mean to, but the Media Freedom Act has it needs to be best in class. It is definitely going to feed into the Digital Social Media Services Acts, the overall essence, what we're going through right now with, of course, RTE in terms of factual programming and how that works. But that can't take away from certain people in middle management making poor decisions historically. We still need content and factual news to come forward. So sorry, I talked long-winded there, but
I know. Yeah, but again, the mismanagement in RTE basically blinds a lot of people. It kind of takes over the debate, in that we've other public broadcasters, or broadcasters who produce public broadcasting, and they're not getting a slice of the license fee cake. Isn't there a case to say that model is broken? I mean, for example, you have Virgin Media. It was TV3, and this year they're celebrating 25 years of public broadcasting as they see it. And why are they discriminated against? And again, down to the 1 and 2 person media operations around the country. And I could list lots of them. Every large town and county now seems to have them. And local people gravitate to those sources of information. Surely there should be a tiered system whereby more of that cake is distributed more evenly.
I couldn't agree with you more. And this is someone who my undergrad is journalism and visual media. I worked behind the scenes in TV for a number of years. When I came back to Ireland, my partner at the time and I pitched several factual documentaries with various the two main broadcasters that we had. You were able to secure a partnership on a sports documentary with TG Cahir, but was very limited funding, considering we are delivering on something that we know the 32 counties would be interested in. And not just Ireland and the Northern Ireland, but also further afield. So I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think that tiered system would work very well, inclusive of even community radio space, so that they also have a slice of the pie. Because ultimately, if we are going to create good governance right across the board, then funding has to follow with that too. I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah, but I know a case of actually a community radio station not too far from here, and they could only get a 6 month license, and then they had to go back on and broadcast online again, because from my vantage point, because of what I call the legacy media. Basically, you have the big operators, it could be the radio space, it could be in any other media space, who have their slice of cake and want to protect their territory. How is the act going to make it easier for new entrants to come into the media space here in Ireland?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a clean answer for you there, because to your point earlier, if you look at now Virgin Media and the legacy that they've had to remain competitive in order to get private entities to support. And then when you look at, I'm not a big fan of alcohol companies sponsoring youth sports in particular, or gambling organizations. However, how do we survive and show them on screen or talk about them if we don't have the funding to do that? So
Yeah.
I hear the broken cycle. It's certainly not sustainable. And I would be and I cannot reiterate enough, like wholeheartedly in agreement with all that you're sharing, that if we are going to have a very, very best in class, good governed, transparent media space, then so too the funding has to follow with that is equally bearing. That it shouldn't be down to a handful of people sitting around a board table in Dublin making decisions about TG Carr, about Y'all and Leash, about community radio, and ultimately saying, well, we might run a big production, and because of that big production, we're scaling back on everything else. I mean, I watch and hear a lot of content based off the work that I do, and I get as much insight into this type of conversation listening than I would at a big glitzy show. But and sadly, I know for a fact someone like yourself is getting nowhere near the pie that something like that is. So there has to be a balance, and there just has to be leaders who understand the space we're living in right now and make better choices for all, not just some.
Which actually leads me on perfectly to my next
Oh
question.
no,
Basically,
that means I set myself up there. I got a second.
no. See, you were born in '87. Okay,
Yeah.
so
36.
you're the
36, Bob. Thanks
yeah,
very
I
much.
know. No. So you're
I kid.
I mean, basically, you're the digital generation. So how do you get that younger still generation into politics? How do you get them in? What's the selling point?
Yeah, I mean,
You,
to your point, to your point, I remember getting my first phone. I think I was 13, 14. I worked very hard to save me savings to get this Motorola block phone. I don't know if anybody with the antenna. I don't know if anybody remembers. It's still alive and well and probably in full battery like the Nokia phones are back in the day. But I say that because I grew up, my youth was very much outside in rural Ireland. And it was only in my teens where phones really started coming in, and we didn't have the social media. I mean, my account probably on Bebo is still going. I wasn't a MySpace girl. I went from Bebo to Facebook, and I say all of that for listeners who perhaps are like me, and like your good self. At least I had younger years
yes.
to explore my imagination and curiosity, versus I see my nieces and nephew right now who live further afield. Two's in Australia, one's in America, and are connecting through a FaceTime and can swipe a phone before they're even one. Like, that's a scary realization. But to your point on, and to your question on younger people, I cannot underestimate the fact that conversation is still an integral part of connecting with people. I think in a time where fake news, disinformation, a small percentage of people are toxic, is the best way to say it. And when you look at a European front, about 70% of Europeans believe they consume fake news on a daily basis. But yet, when you look at that number and you think, right, what is that? Every 3 or 4 images I see are predominantly fake. Then how do I critically think about what's real and what's wrong? And we're adults. So we need to ensure critical thought is discussed and debated in schools. We need to make sure the likes of the European Ambassador Schools Programme and the Blue Schools Programme that are at their EU funding programs get into more schools and not just some. That politics and society is a requirement across all schools, not just some, so that we can debate and discuss, and that people are not deciding, well, I seen one leader say this and she put it up to him, versus she did this and came across weak but really authentic. But what is real, and how do I decipher from that? But from a social media content, I don't think young people should have phones. I don't. I know I often lose them there. It's a parental choice, of course, at the end of the day. But I think the more and more we can keep young people curious and imaginative focused in terms of being outside, in terms of being involved in arts or sports or something that takes them outside of this us and them narrative or this comparison, which is a thief of a lot of joy, then we have a better society overall. But we're not there yet, sadly.
Not there yet. Not there yet. And down the road, never say never. Would you consider running for the leadership of the Fine Gael party, Maria?
You know, you should never. I tell you what, you should never say never. I asked this question to a young person about being an MEP or a Taoiseach, and she said absolutely not. Sure, I wouldn't have that. And I turned it back to say, you know, if particularly as a young woman, if people are asking you questions and they see something perhaps you don't see yourself, so never say that, and always put yourself on the pedestal versus allowing people to kind of kick you off it. With all of that said, right now I'm seeking a European seat again. Never say never, but I'm really enjoying where I am right now in terms of growing my political acumen. And I think that's incredibly important, and understanding where my voice could help with, and where I need to grow more as a politician and as a person. So never say never, but by no means in the foreseeable.
Okay. Okay. Well answered.
Not,
Well
not, not,
answered.
not, not. You won't see me announcing in the next couple of days, anyways. Just to stress that.
Yeah, yeah. Down the line, possibly down the line. So look,
Yeah. I mean, I hope.
Maria.
I mean, can I just say, like, I really hope we
Yes.
have a female in our party at some point. I do not. I mean, based off what the last number of hours have delivered, I don't believe we'll see a female Fine Gael party leader yet, or a Taoiseach. But I do hope we see someone soon, because we're a fantastic country for equality. Regardless of what's going on right now in some communities, and some differences of a small amount of people. The Irish people and European people are fantastic, authentic leaders, and I hope we as a country are representing them in the best possible way or shape or form, sending out and electing people who may not always get it right, but are authentically driven. So with all of that said, I just hope we see great leaders in the future. Yeah.
And we look forward to seeing you on our doorstep soon. Don't forget, don't forget Laois and Portlaoise.
I won't. I'll practice. I'm a big fan of yours. As a former Rose of Tralee, now 10 years old, we had our regional. I gathered in Portlaoise with my fellow Rose sisters, about 70 of us in 2014 at the Maybank holiday, and that was my first taste into the Rose of Tralee. So Laois as a county is very special, and I look forward to coming back to you.
Yeah, because what people don't realize is it's a suburban county now. Our population is almost, well, rocketing for 100,000. The population of Portlaoise is very quickly heading for 30,000, and that point was hammered home at our recent St. Patrick's Day parade. To the committee, organising parade committee, well done, brilliant parade, but it was a huge turnout. And I think the penny has dropped now that sometime in the not too distant future, Portlaoise is going to be a city.
Yeah,
and
which is exciting.
It's exciting, but again, we don't have the facilities that matches the population, especially the sports facilities. That's where we're really, really lagging behind. So that was one of the topics that came from the parade, and we have a basketball club.
I'm glad you shared that with me, because when I work with my team now, I'll ensure that message is delivered home, that while it's exciting to be scaling so much, we do have crunch points in terms of infrastructure. And what I mean by that is affordable housing, roads, sports amenities, cultural amenities, that if we have a city in the heartlands of our country, they have to be best in class in order to match other European cities that are scaling just to the point of Portlaoise. So I hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, I mean, just one little example before we finish up. We have our local Portlaoise Panthers basketball club. They have a big playoff game this weekend.
Good
They're
luck.
hopefully they're going to get into the Super League. However, on two occasions recently, one occasion they had to have their juvenile players mopping the floor of the court because of leaks in the roof. The other problem was they had a huge crowd in, over 400, for a recent game. And at halftime, they just basically had to ask everyone to leave the building because of condensation. It's like, yeah, a first world club with third world facilities.
Wow, I hadn't heard that, but thank you for flagging that. And not good enough. That's it. I mean, there's nowhere else to say except not good enough for the players, parents, community, and spectators that are part of a sport that's really growing and dominating across the country. So
and unfortunately, not only basketball, squash, badminton, handball. We have clubs in this town that have to travel way outside of Portlaoise to even practice.
No, not good enough. Not good enough. Okay.
But they're the growing pains of a soon to be city.
Yeah, but to your point, I mean, are creating issues and are solvable and fixable. That's probably the most frustrating for people and players, that, to your point, best in class, but not sufficient facilities. When you look at, we've been exporting players of different sports to different parts of the world because we're able to house them and support them in very different ways. And the same should be said for all sports, not just some. Okay, I take that point on board.
Exactly. So yeah, looking forward to your frequent visits now to Laois and Portlaoise.
I'm gonna have to, well, based off that sporting conversation, I'm gonna have to get a lot fitter. I'd practice my my dribbling, and practice my doorstep speech, because to your point, it needs to be reflective of the crunch points that are happening and the challenges that are happening in Laois for Laois people.
Yeah, thank you. Well said. So look, Maria, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule today. We really appreciate it. Best of luck, and best of luck to all the candidates in the local elections and the European elections soon to arrive on our doorstep. And yeah, best of luck.
Thank you. And just finally, let me just say, June 7th, local and European elections. To John's point, very best of luck to all candidates. Check the register. Make sure you're on it. Have your voice heard and vote counted. We have democracy to enacting, and we need to make sure our votes are and our voices are being heard. So check the register.ie.
Well said, Maria. Thanks for that, and bye for now.